Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 132. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here on this Tuesday. Steelers Nation, Dave and I going to our Tuesday, Friday schedule for the foreseeable future. Of course, we'll change that up whenever any breaking news comes in, certainly when the team hires a new GM. Whenever that is, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing better than I was the last show.
Good.
I'm feeling a little bit better there, about on the backside of this, I hope, and all. But should be able to get through it a lot easier today with a lot less coughing, I hope, and all. But an exciting day on the NFL calendar, with the start of OTA practices. The next let's see, they got 6 practices over the course of the next 2 weeks, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on each of them to kick off their OTAs. And then, let's see, I think they take a few days off there, and then they get to the mandatory mini camp portion of the off season. So things moving right along, if you will. And, we might, we're not going to get a lot of questions answered, I don't think, over the course of the next 2 weeks, but there will be a few of them, I think, that are on not only our minds, but fans, minds of the listeners as well, too. And so it's an interesting portion of the year now that the roster's at 90.
It is. Football's really back in its first form of the new season with the entire, 90-man roster able to attend. It's not just rookies or not just a certain section of players, and you get some level of on-field workout, 7-on-7. Again, no tackling. They're not live, but it's going to look more like football. So, Dave, I know yesterday you put together a list of 7 key questions ahead of the first 6 practices, kind of run through to you, and I'm sure it's just their thoughts shared by me and everyone else, but some of the top things you're looking for starting today.
Yeah, and a lot of these probably could be separated out into 2 or 3 categories, or a lot, there could be probably 8 or 9 things probably added to this, but these are things that are kind of were on the top of my mind here, just as kind of bullet points, kind of a primer, if you will, as we get into football and short season. That's good to say here. But first and foremost, what's going to happen with Stephon Tuitt? Will he be present? Obviously, new quarterbacks and all is going to be a main topic here throughout moving forward into the offseason. But I think the OTA status of defensive end Stephon Tuitt is pretty huge here. And look, these are not mandatory sessions, and I don't know how many times we're going to have to say that throughout this thing. They are not mandatory sessions, so you cannot ding a player for not being present at these first 6 practices here. However, with the fact that Tuitt has missed so much time, missed all of last year, and obviously, I as far as I can tell, and I don't know for sure, he hasn't been present at any of the first 2 phases of the offseason program. One would think, and that's dangerous to put out there, but one would think that Stephon Tuitt would be present at the start of OTA practices. And Kevin Colbert's been asked about Tuitt several times over the course of the offseason, and talking about once they get out there on the grass and they'll see what kind of shape he is. Well, this is one of those instances where they're going to be out on the grass here. So to me, that's question number 1, because if he is not out there, then we're all going to continue to wonder, has he played his last down in the NFL?
Mm-hmm. Sure. It is, to me, the biggest question entering today, the most important question, just because today is one of those, and I talked about this in my terrible take yesterday, to use your phrase, the line in the sand. Now, here's the way I framed it. If Tuitt does show up today or sometime this week, then his odds of attempting to play this year obviously seem near 100%. If he does not show up, I don't want to say those odds of him playing this year are 0, because he still could show up for, let's say, mandatory minicamp or next week or something like that. But obviously the odds of him playing seem to decrease heavily. And so if he shows up, It's about near 100% he's going to attempt to play and should play this year. If he doesn't, I don't want to say it's zero, but obviously that would put a lot of cold water on the optimism that Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert and Art Rooney have stated this offseason.
I mean, it's a story of the week if he shows up, I think, right?
If he doesn't show up.
Or if he doesn't show up, what continues to be the question mark of the offseason, right? Right. If you will here. So, look, I know there's several different things that we can talk about and look for as we move forward, but we all know how things change as off seasons progress and injuries and all like that. And what we see happen in these first 6 practices doesn't necessarily dictate what's going to happen come the first week of the season, but I think Stephon Tuitt and his presence is number one on my list here. In whatever order you want to move forward here, what's the offensive line going to look like? I think you've got a pretty good grasp or a pretty good guess at it overall here. But until we get kind of that first designation there, we are still guessing. The Steelers obviously added a couple of pieces during free agency in James Daniels and Mason Cole, and instead of who's on first, who's at center. Is it going to be Mason Cole? Is it going to be second year player Kendrick Green? Are they going to let Kendrick Green effectively lose the job during the offseason? How's that? I think the only thing we know right now, or that we think that we know at this point, is that Dan Moore Jr. will be at left tackle and Jaquan Okorafor will be at right tackle. I think that's kind of the only thing that would probably you would bet your house on at this point. Everything else, is kind of guesstimation from there. So I think that we know how this might go. And why don't you tell the people how you think that it might go?
Sure. My thought for a while now, and I understand this thing could look a lot of different ways, nothing set in stone, not even, starting today necessarily, but left to right, Dan Moore at left tackle, probably still Kevin Dotson at left guard, Mason Cole at center, James Daniels at right guard, Jaquan Okorafor at right tackle, Kendrick Green maybe becoming that swing man who's going to get work at center and guard and really pick up a lot of snaps at guard, especially right guard, considering he's really never played there before. That was my initial thought when they made all these signings. But again, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility there. Dotson can play either guard spot. Daniels can play and has played all 3 interior spots. Cole has been a primary center in his career, but he has played guard, including last year with Minnesota. So that's where you like you said, it gets tricky. Those things could go in a lot of different ways. Where does Green slot in? Does he move around? Does he play more guard? Does he split time? Those are a lot of the big questions there.
Here's the thing too, man. You hope with whatever you kind of see or gets reported out this week, you kind of hope that they have some consistency in this throughout the offseason. Not only that, they can stay healthy, because remember the start of training camp last year. I mean, did they ever get time? How many practices did that starting 5 actually get to have together there before the season started? And it really went downhill quick from even there. So you hope that maybe whatever the 5 are, whatever combination it is, hopefully those 5 can work together from here on out the rest of the offseason.
Sure, that'd be nice. That would be ideal. I think continuity is really important to have. And you're right, they didn't really have that last year for a variety of reasons. They got some snaps together as a unit, I think, real late in camp. But it was also because we were counting some of that starting 5 as Zach Banner being started that starting 5. And then he came back real late in camp and then obviously had a setback and didn't play at all last season, save for, I think, 1 or 3 snaps, whatever the number was. So we'll see what happens there. It's about putting the best 5 out there, obviously. But I think you want to start toying around with who fits where best and how does Green. And really for the guys that are returning, it's a huge year for Kendrick Green. It's a huge year for Kevin Dotson. Those guys really have to show that they can improve upon where they were at last year. Obviously for Dotson, show he can be healthy and get past the ankle sprain he dealt with. So yeah, for the interior offensive line is probably the second biggest thing to watch for behind Stephon Tuitt.
All right, moving on, some secondary guessing as well, too. And look, the team obviously re-signed a few guys in that secondary this offseason, Kella Witherspoon and Terrell Edmonds. They went outside. They added a guy in Levi Wallace at corner late in the offseason. Another kind of safety chess piece if you will, and DeMonte Casey. Obviously, cornerback Cameron Sutton's back, and safety Minkah Fitzpatrick are back. I don't know if we'll see Minkah or not. I'm not too overly concerned if guys like Minkah don't show up. You would kind of hope they would, especially with Minkah being around, I think in phase, some portion of phase 2 there. What is this secondary going to look like? Are the outside guys going to be Levi Wallace and Akella Witherspoon? Could we potentially see Cameron Sutton, move more inside this year? What's the nickel and the dime going to look like in this defense this year?
Sure, all great questions, and I think on paper, a nickel cornerback room of Witherspoon, Wallace on the outside, Sutton in the slot makes the most sense. Wallace, Witherspoon are clearly purely outside corners, and Sutton can play inside out. I know they have been hesitant and reluctant to put Sutton in the slot a lot, except for some dime situations, because they want someone who has more of that Mike Hilton type feel. That's why Arthur Millette played in the slot on a lot of rundowns and a lot of blitzing situations last year. But Sutton certainly would be the most logical slot option of those names. Other names you mentioned, DeMonte Casey, Trey Norwood in year 2. I think he certainly played well enough as a rookie with his IQ, ability to cover in man coverage, that he deserves a look and should have some sort of role for this team as well. So it's good to have those options. It's better to have too many options than not enough options, which is where this team sat last year, losing Hilton, losing Nelson, and having some injuries in training camp. But I don't know exactly how it's going to look.
Wasn't the big storyline last year about who was the kid out of Maryland?
Antoine Brooks Jr.
Yeah. That's how quickly that thing changed. I forgot his name.
They went through so many slot corners last year, they couldn't find anybody.
Right. So, that's something that went on into the, throughout the offseason, into training camp, and then Brooks is on the sideline, and then lo and behold, Brooks is waived injured, right? That's how quickly that thing went along there. And obviously with Levi Wallace being a new piece here and DeMonte Casey being a new piece here, it would be, once again, it's a situation like the offensive line. You'd like to see them maybe, settle on a group early and be able to work that group throughout the entire offseason there.
Sure, but I just want to get eyes on what they're thinking to start with, and I don't know if we're going to get all that information. I don't know how much dime you're going to see in some of these beginning OTAs and things like that. It's probably going to be more base, a little bit of sub, nickel packages, but certainly those are some of the outstanding questions in my mind.
All right, what's the slot going to look like on the offensive side of the ball, Alex? Out from last year are Juju Smith-Schuster and Ray McLeod, the two main slot options last year. And while the Steelers did draft a couple of young wide receivers in George Pickens and Calvin Austin III, the latter of which is probably down the line, going to be your slot, you would think. Both those kids mostly played outside in college overall. Are you going to throw Calvin Austin right in that starting slot position right out of the chute? Probably not. What about a guy like Anthony Miller? Quite honestly, if you look at this roster top to bottom right now, Anthony Miller might be your prime candidate to be an OTA opening slot wide receiver for this team, but with his experience back in Chicago and obviously having played with Mitch Trubisky there as well. So this team really doesn't have a lot of true, really good slot options. Looking at this thing, could you see Chase Claypool kick inside as a big slot? I think that's a question worth kind of asking here, at least at the start of this thing, is what the OTA opening slot's going to look like.
Right. And could George Pickens play some inside as well? I think that's certainly possible. He's got, I think, the skill set and fluidity. He's primarily an outside guy at Georgia, but he talked about practicing in the slot during practice all the time with the Bulldogs. So a lot of unknowns there. Hopefully we find out some. I don't know if it's going to be so detailed that we'll get to really know who's all playing slot and what the order is. Hopefully one or two nuggets of that come out. But I want to see a lot of Calvin Austin. I want to see what this guy can do. It's a different skill set. It's an exciting skill set. I think it fits well in Matt Canada's offense. So I hope we hear a lot about Calvin Austin these next 2 weeks.
All right. Obviously, the quarterbacks are going to be in focus here. Kenny Pickett, the team's first round pick this year. My main thing is, what is it going to look like? And obviously, we're going to get secondhand reporting here, and probably can't trust 2/3 of it anyway there. But just kind of wondering if Kenny Pickett can at least kind of push early, give us any kind of signs or coach speak from the coaches, if you will, about him at least going to have a little bit of a chance to push for the week 1 job, or at a minimum show that this guy can potentially be the week 1 backup here. Once again, I don't think the gap is overly huge between him and Mitch Trubisky to start this thing off. That being said, Mitch Trubisky does have the experience overall in this, and I think for Pickett to even get himself in a position here to be in the conversation of being a week 1 starter, he really has to hit the ground running here in these next 10 practices, 6 specifically here in OTAs, show a good grasp of the offense, be able to get people to line up in the right positions, and really just be in command, not wonder, well, that's a rookie out there, that him being the rookie can't be the excuse in this.
Right.
If he shows the maturity out there early, I have no doubt that he can pick up the playbook, and he's a mature guy overall, a very experienced guy coming out of college with all those games. Can he translate that quickly enough to at least after these first 6 to 10 practices have people saying, you know what? Maybe he can push for this week 1 job.
Sure. I believe Trubisky's going to take the first team snaps here at OTAs.
Sure.
Because he's the veteran guy, but that's to me expected. And it's less about what order Pickett's running with. Is he splitting time? Is he running exclusively with the 2s? I don't care about that too much right now. I care about just how he looks with the reps that he gets. And that's all that matters. And if he looks good with the reps that he gets, that's going to put him in a chance to get first team reps and take more and more of those snaps as you go along the offseason and into training camp. So how does Pickett overall look? The command, doing the little things well, taking care of the football, being detailed, being a leader, all the things you mentioned is going to be Pickett's job. Less interested in exactly is he running 1s or 2s and how they split time, more interested in just how does Pickett look the first time working with a full roster with all the veterans being there.
Yeah, my main question is, can he come out of these OTAs with us thinking, okay, this guy has a shot,
Right. It is interesting how many reps will Mason Rudolph get. I think you mentioned that as well. And how do they split up the division of labor? That's going to be, to me, one of those big important questions is how do you accurately evaluate and give these guys a fair opportunity, not just now, but also in training camp? It's going to be tough to do because reps overall are still pretty limited.
Right, and especially if you're looking at OTAs and you're thinking, well, okay, we got 4 quarterbacks on the roster here. We're going to try to even out these reps as much as possible between these 4 guys. That doesn't play in Pickett's favor, because I think Pickett at some point during this thing is going to need a lot of reps.
Right.
And is that beginning in mandatory mini camp? Does that begin in training camp? I mean, obviously,
I think it begins now. I
think it does too, and that's why I put it on on this list here about really the question being is, can he push early? I think it's too late. There's nothing to gain, in my opinion, at this point of giving Mason Rudolph a quarter of the snaps or a third of the snaps or half of the snaps in OTA practices. Hell, he should know this offense inside and out. They know what they have in him. Conversely, with Chris Oladuncan, let's be realistic here. A lot of things have got to happen before he's under center for you. Yeah, you want to give him a rep or 2 here, but most of his probably needs to be middle reps to start off, and then every time he gets in there, hopefully he doesn't blow the 1 or 2 reps that live reps that he does get. This, in my opinion, this should be about your 2 new quarterbacks. It should be about Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett here. So it'll be interesting to see. Too bad we don't have Alex Kozora out there kind of counting these things of who's getting what, because I don't think they're allowed to report in that kind of detail.
No.
Most of them are too lazy. They wouldn't anyway in that. But, I just wonder what the coach speak and what the talk's going to be about 10 practices from now.
Sure. We'll be counting those reps in training camp, though. I promise. So that's already certainly going to be high on my list of things to monitor. But you're right. This offseason and camp and preseason included in that has to be about finding out as much as you possibly can about your 2 new quarterbacks, about Mitch Trubisky and about Kenny Pickett. You know what you have in Mason Rudolph. There isn't much of a ceiling left. He's going into year 5 with his team. He's got a lot of reps in past, summers and off seasons when Ben wasn't doing a whole lot. And Oladokin, good story. You root for the kid, but he's not playing for you this year. And if he has something terribly wrong, what happened a la Duck in 2019. So your plan has to be, what do you have in your 2 new guys? And those guys have to dominate the reps overall to give those guys a fair shot. And so you can make the best and most accurate and most thorough evaluation possible.
All right, the next thing I have on the list here is, what's this edge depth chart going to look like? I have a feeling that we know probably the first 3 in here. Look, T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith is a nice starting duo to have. Obviously, you'd like to see Highsmith take that next jump in that. This is the year we find out if Alex Highsmith's going to be a 10-year player in the NFL, I think. This is the year that you really want to see him become that force on the other side and make teams really pay for double teaming a guy like paying too much attention to guys like Watt and Cam Hayward on that defensive line there. So it goes without saying, but that's more of a comment for another day. Is can Alex Highsmith progress? Right now, he's the number 2 guy. He's going to be the number 2 guy, barring anything happening. But what's behind those two, Watt and Highsmith? The team went out and signed Jannard Avery during the offseason. You know me, I was a huge Avery fan, but I'm more of an Avery fan as an off-the-ball linebacker than I was an edge rusher. I'm really concerned there, Alex, about Avery. I like Avery better as a number 4 edge than I do as a number 3 edge, to be quite honest with you. Hopefully he can make me eat those words, if asked to hold down that role. What's behind those 3, though? They cut John Simon a couple of days ago there, so he's out of the picture. Now you got Derek Tuska, Delonte Scott, 2 basically part-time carryovers from 2021, and even further down the depth chart are a few undrafted rookies. So, I'm not concerned about Watt and Highsmith. I'm just concerned about, you're going to play those guys 97% of the snaps throughout the season and wear them down to nubs and have to worry about the groin injuries and all like that, or can any of these guys step up, or is somebody not on the team yet that can help take that role?
Right. I really think there's a real opportunity for one of these young guys to make their mark. I'm going to guess TJ Watt isn't going to do a ton of work in OTAs. They're going to be careful with his reps and make sure that he's healthy going into what's going to be, a long season for him and for this team. So, the undrafted guys, the TD Moultries from Auburn, Tyree Johnson from Texas A&M. Usually in OTAs, there's one young guy that no one really thinks about too much. Mike Hilton's one of those guys several years back that really has a strong spring. And so I wonder, maybe we come out of this hearing some buzz about one of these young undrafted pass rushers. If not, then certainly you better hope to hear some good things about Jannard Avery.
Yeah, and moving on from that, that question leads kind of led into my last one there. Can any of these undrafteds create a draft, if you will? Look, the original 10's already down to 9. Bryce Watts was not only waived injured there, he's been waived off of the reserve injured with an injury settlement now at this point. So the 10 wasn't even 10 come the first day of OTAs. It's now 9. Now there are obviously some interesting names on the list. You named a couple of them, a couple of those edge rushers worth kind of paying attention to. Tyree Johnson and TD Moultrie are those 2 edge guys. I think the running backs there are intriguing, especially Mateo Durant out of Duke. I mean, you look at this list of 9, and then obviously the handful of the tryout players that were signed as well too. But if you look at that group in totality, at least on paper, you would think Mateo Durant maybe has the best chance of all these guys to maybe making the 53-man roster overall. This team lacks in depth at the running back position. Anthony McFarland Jr., I don't think is a lock to make this roster. I think Benny Snell Jr.'s path to hanging on another year is through the special teams department. This team's shown no sign of re-signing veteran Kalen Ballage, which they shouldn't, to be honest with you, at this point. So It's up for Mateo Durant, I think, to take the bull by the horns and go out there and win a roster spot there. And maybe one of these young edge guys that you mentioned in Tyree Johnson and TD Moultrie can start stepping up right away, learning this defense, knowing where to be in this defense. And more importantly, at some point between now and week 1, make Danny Smith a fan of them.
Right. That's what so many guys have done. We've seen some edge guys that have, caught on. Tuzar Skipper. Last year, Jameer Jones really, that path was almost solely through special teams. He didn't last too long on the roster once the year began, but still made the team, still beat out a draft pick like Quincy Roche. So sure, usually, I'm sure we'll hear about one of these UDFA guys or tryout guys that got signed to a contract, Tyler Snead, Platel, Trevon Mason, something like that. We'll see kind of who the buzz is on. But one guy you mentioned, not a UDFA, but McFarland. What a big year it is for him. It's make or break for sure. I mean, this is a guy that has got 30 something carries in his first 2 years, dealt with the MCL sprain last year, missed the first half of last season. He was getting involved a pretty good bit in camp last year in terms of some of the jet action and things like that. So maybe there was going to be a plan for him, and that all got scrapped because of the injury. And then when he came back, the season was more than halfway through, and so you had Najee, and you were just kind of running with those guys. But for McFarland, I mean, this is kind of old hat to him in OTAs in year number 3. But if this guy's going to do anything, now is the time to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is no tomorrow.
Right.
Right now when it comes to a guy like this. And man, when you go back and you think about the explosiveness that explosive runs that he had in college and kind of how you envision, look, Matt Canada knew this kid, right? It's not like he didn't know what he was, what he was having to work with here. If Anthony McFarland can't make a dent and can't be your number 2 guy this year, then your scouting department, something went wrong somewhere in that. Look, running backs are fungible as it is. You can't miss when you draft one of them, especially in the first 4 rounds or so. So that is a guy that really, really needs to turn some heads throughout this summer.
Right. If he can't be the number 2, like you said, he's probably not going to be anything on this roster. And you just go find some other guy that can be a more defined backup runner.
Right. All right. So that's kind of my 7 kind of things to look for, primer, if you will. Do you have anything you would like to add to it?
Not in particular. I think just looking at the second year guys, the 2021 class, what have they done? How have they worked to improve in year number 2? Because there's always that jump, even for the rookies. And this rookie class last year played a ton of snaps, more than what's common for a rookie class overall. Top to bottom, whether you're talking Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth at the top to Dan Moore, Kendrick Green, Loudermilk played a lot more than we thought he would. Norwood played quite a bit. Of course, the 7th-round pick in Harbin. Really, all these draft picks played last year, except for Roche, who got claimed off of waivers. So I understand they're probably a little bit further along than a typical rookie class, but still, what are they going to do in year 2? They finally got a chance to breathe because for those rookies, man, you go from your season to all-star games to they didn't have a combine last year, but you had pro days to get drafted to rookie minicamp to OTAs to training camp to preseason, the playoffs, regular season, all that kind of stuff. And you finally have a chance to kind of let your body rest and hit the ground running in year number 2 with a bunch of tape at your back to learn and improve upon. So what is Trey Norwood doing in year 2? Loudermilk's talked about getting stronger, improving his lower body strength, things like that. So always interested in seeing those guys that are second year in the league. How do they look and how have they improved from their rookie season?
Here we are in year 2, and you look upon guys like Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth like, oh man, these guys need to act like grizzled veterans.
Right. They played like it. I mean, they have the snap count. So because Kim Hayward didn't play this many snaps, so probably like you number 3 or 4 in his career.
Right.
The number of snaps that Harris and Freiermuth and those guys played last year.
I mean, you're at the point now where it's almost like a given. Like these guys are like we're talking about. Jerome Bettis and Heath Miller here,
It's like, when's the rest day for Najee Harris? Yeah,
right.
Once he gets some time off.
Right. I mean, and those guys are big components in this. I mean, this offense is extremely young, and I think we've asked the question a few times: is who are the leaders on offense?
Mm-hmm.
With Ben Roethlisberger obviously no longer there. With Juju Smith-Schuster no longer there. We've heard out of Najee's mouth really since the end of last season is his want to be more vocal and be that next, that leader, and he's going to have to be, and Pat Fryman's going to have to be as well too. Those guys, because we're going to be asking the question on the offensive line throughout the offseason too. Who's the leader of the offensive line? We never really got a good answer to that question last year, did we? And
I think Trey Turner was the leader, but
right.
Obviously he's not around. But yeah, I mean, it's who's your best five, and then who's going to become the leader from that group.
Right. So, you look at a couple of, guys like Najee Harris and Pat Fryman don't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah, they have got to step up and be big leaders on the offensive side of football here for the foreseeable future too. Obviously you want Kenny Pickett to step into that role and it become his thing, but that's not going to have, as much as he tries, he's going to have to kind of earn that, if you will, at least throughout his rookie season and all. So a lot of question marks on the offensive side of this ball, and I think it's very, very important. Hopefully a guy like Deontay Johnson shows up at this thing for most of these offseason practices, because they need a lot of reps together on the offensive side of the ball moving forward.
Right. That's another good question as well. Does anybody not show up? Does Minka show up? Does Deontay show up? Does Chris Boswell show up, I suppose? I mean, I guess those are some questions there, but you're right. I think the leadership component is one of those underrated factors because there is so much turnover. There is so much new. And I really think it comes down to what quarterbacks step up and lead. And this is really the first chance to lead. The whole, or presumably most of the 90-man group is together. This is when leaders start to emerge and who's going to take charge and show command. And so that's one of those difficult to quantify, but something you would see on the field if you were there, things to look for over the next 2 weeks. And so, I just looked up the numbers on Cam Hayward. I don't have his rookie year snap total. I'm sure it was pretty low, but in 2012, his second year, he played 262 snaps. Last year, Najee played just about 1,000. And so really, Cam Hayward didn't play as many snaps as Najee Harris has already played until his third year in the league, like late third year in the league. And so times have definitely changed.
Right.
All right, Dave. Should be exciting. So what, OTAs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll cover it with interviews and whatever news. And big thing here, knock on wood, everyone stay healthy. That's the other thing. You get out of here healthy. That's always the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Football in shorts, and hopefully not football in sweats.
Right. Yeah, for sure. All right, Dave, let's give a quick update on the Steelers GM search. Obviously, no name named yet, according to Jerry Dulac, with the big story here, the hire will happen soon. So what does that mean? We don't know. He says he's not sure if the list of 6, which they've interviewed the 6 people a second time, that's been completed, but will that list get whittled down to, let's say, 2 or 3 names that would be true finalists? Not sure on that either, but hopefully we'll get a resolution by the end of the month.
Yeah, and that's kind of what, I was kind of hoping maybe by today we'd get some word, or by Friday at the least. I don't know. I mean, obviously Kevin Colbert's contract runs through the end of this month, so one would think breaking news sooner rather than later.
Has your thoughts changed at all? Is it going to be internal versus external? Have you moved on any of that in any regard?
No, I haven't really troubled myself on it, to be honest with you. Now, my wife says it's going to be Weidl, so take that for what it's worth.
Okay, I think if it's an external guy, and we're all guessing, but I think if it is an external guy, it's going to be Weidl. For whatever it's worth.
She says the whole Pittsburgh connection and the way that Kevin Colbert came in, and my wife knows nothing about this, but she told me it's going to be probably the guy on the outside.
I mean, that all makes sense to me. I think those are some of the reasons we've been talking about. So I think that all tracks. Whatever it's worth, there's a guy on Twitter, and it's some anonymous scout account, and they're obviously a little hard to trust, but he thinks it'll be Omar Khan. He says he's been hearing it's Omar Khan. So again, we're all just guessing. I thought it'd be Brandon Hunt for a while. We'll see what happens.
Did you have something to say?
I assume that's directed at Tiff.
Right.
Did she have something to say?
What is it? Hold on a minute. Here's some commentary. Oh, okay. All right. We can carry on then. She does not further want to weigh in on the topic.
All right. She'll do a victory lap whenever Weidl gets tapped as the hire.
I'll do a victory lap in her honor.
For sure. Dave, this is going to be a bit of a difficult transition and an uncomfortable story, but we wanted to pass along this news because it is important news and some new details on some of the lead up to Dwayne Haskins' death. A toxicology report was released Monday, obtained by the Miami Herald. And so they wrote about what that report found. And we do this as a matter of fact, where this is a news story. And certainly there's been a lot of questions about, how did Dwayne Haskins end up trying to cross a very busy Florida highway and things like that. So I want to be as respectful to this conversation as possible. I know you do as well, because still ultimately the main focus here is just the tragic loss of life and the person that Dwayne Haskins was and things like that. But according to the toxicology report, Haskins had a blood alcohol level ranging from 0.2 to 0.24, which is well above the legal limit of 0.08. They found some other drugs in the system as well. They don't know exactly, the origin or the reason for that, but I just wanted to give the update there. I'm sure you guys have already seen the news by now. It's been in basically every sort of outlet. And again, that's just we knew this toxicology report was coming. It takes 45 to 90 days for that to get officially test results and released and all that kind of stuff. And so just wanted to give the update there, because obviously whenever his death happened last month, so many people asked, how did this happen? What was the cause? And this might shed some light.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people out there say, well, why does that stuff have to be reported, and why do you guys have to pass it along? Well, it's kind of what we do. We don't know, we don't know the specifics of that. Could a mistake have been made in here somewhere? We don't know. But this is the initial report. Excuse me, that was passed along, I think, yesterday. Is obviously a toxicology report. And the other things that went along with it, I know I think there's a kind of an additional report out there that there might have been another female in the car that they found that was passed out there. We don't know for sure. All we can do is pass along the information and try to be as respectful as we can in doing so. The whole thing, though, regardless, you look at this thing, it's just so very tragic overall. Mm-hmm. These other layers to it are just, after the fact, unfortunate add-ons, I guess, if you will, if indeed all this stuff deems to be true here. And, you just hope and pray that, the family can find some sort of peace in this as things move forward to it. But, we have kind of a duty of what we do on a day-to-day basis to try to, pass along this stuff, news, and especially in situations like this where it's super unfortunate or super unsavory, if you will, of trying to be as respectful as we can and talk about it, to some level, and not be judgmental throughout any of this at all. And that's kind of where we're at on this thing. So I think as kind of the next several weeks continue on here, all the details of this will be out. And, from me looking at it right now, I mean, it was tragic the day it happened, and nothing is going to change me from thinking that. It's mm-hmm. just very unfortunate the way some of these details are unfortunately coming out.
Sure. I do want to read the end of a statement from Rick Elsley, attorney on behalf of Haskins' widow, says, quote, "On behalf of Dwayne's wife, his family, and his memory, and behalf of the truth, we respectfully request and pray for privacy, for patience, and for the public to withhold any judgment." And so that's the statement there from Haskins' widow. So just wanted to give that information because it is, I think, information worth mentioning. And again, that toxicology report, there's always a lag between the death of someone versus when that report gets released. And that's why it's coming to surface now. But just that's kind of what we have to do, as you said. And that's right. Part of the hard news aspect of the site, and kind of had the obligation to write that story.
Right.
All right, David, I forgot one piece of Steelers news here I wanted to mention as well. Bryce Watts, you talked about how that group of 10 undrafted guys were down to 9. That's because Bryce Watts was waived injured, exiting rookie minicamp. He's now been waived with an injury settlement. Still do not know the nature of the injury or how serious or not serious it was, but that is the official word on Bryce Watts being released with an injury settlement.
Yeah, and hopefully, I think you maybe kind of, maybe it's just one of those long hamstring injuries. At this point with him, I would shy away from thinking that maybe it's a serious knee injury maybe at this point, because normally those guys don't get if it's going to be a long, super long rehabilitation process there, that those guys normally stay on IR, like Isaiah Johnson, I think, is still on IR. That window, I think, is closed for an injury settlement with him. Generally, those things end up being because of long-term serious injuries here with a guy. And this is just me speculating with Bryce Watts here. Maybe it's more along the lines of I don't know, soft tissue tear or something like that. Something that's going to keep him sidelined throughout the rest of these OTA practices, but maybe the closer you get to the season, a guy like him can get healthy and back competing somewhere again. And maybe the door is not totally closed from him. Maybe returning to the Steelers is maybe a practice squad member or something like that, or being a guy that they ultimately, add on during camp. It's bless me at some point there, but he is off of the roster altogether right now, waived with the injury settlement. We don't know what the injury settlement amount is. We'll probably know that, I don't know, the way the NFLPA salary cap page is not updating here. I don't think they've updated this page in like 2 weeks or so here. So it's super way behind. But at some point, we'll find a settlement amount with him being waived completely at this point before June 1st. The Steelers have to eat the entire $10,000 signing bonus that was given him against the cap in 2022. Obviously, had he been waived after June 1st, then only the 2022 portion prorated would count, and the rest would be deferred to 2023. But before this is with this happening before June 1st, the whole kit and caboodle of $10,000 hits the cap against the Steelers this year.
All right, good deal. So we'll see if Bryce Watts ever comes back to the Steelers. It's possible. So we'll see what happens there. Dave, some offseason fodder here. Peter King putting together his offseason power rankings, and in it, Pittsburgh landed 23rd overall. So I don't have much of a reaction ever to anyone's power rankings, but that is where King has the Steelers slotted.
Right. And look, it's ranking season, right? Mm-hmm. We have reached that point of the off season here. What is your first thought when someone throws out that the Steelers are outside of it? Let's say just outside the top 20 in general when it comes to power rankings at this point.
I get it. I guess I understand a team that's had so much turnover and, of course, so much uncertainty with their quarterback is going to generally lend itself to being lower on that list. And so, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it. I don't know where I would put Pittsburgh. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that stuff, but I understand, being in that below average ranking.
That's where I'm at in this as well too. And I don't think people should get kind of overly upset at these things, because quite honestly, if I was to put together a set of power rankings myself right now, I'm not, because it's just at this point of the off season specifically, it's so many things change so quick throughout the rest of the summer here. But I think I would be hard pressed to put the Steelers in the top 20, period.
Yeah. I think it'd probably be around there. I still have faith in this defense and this run defense certainly to improve by leaps and bounds to where it was last year when it was not only 32nd in football, but historically bad, for the Steelers' history. But I think that defense is gonna bounce back. So I might put Pittsburgh a little bit above where Peter King is ranking him, but I don't know if it's not going to be 10 spots above where Peter King puts him.
It's not going to be top 15, is it?
No, it probably would be in that, just guessing 18 to 19.
22 or 18.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't think I'd rank them any just off the cuff, I don't think I'd rank them any higher than 20th right now overall, and that would have them kind of just inside the top 2/3 of the league there. Look, this team, like it or not, if you're listening to this, I'm all about being optimistic and stuff like that, but this team is going to go as this defense goes and as this running game goes, plain and simple. And as much, even if the running game goes to some degree, and it damn sure better go better than it did last year on the ground. At some point, you've got to have a passing game in this thing. And I always go back to that adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. The Steelers' pass defense, especially right out of the chute, has got to be in that 5.5 area or below. I'm convinced at that. And not only that, the offensive, I don't, for this team to compete, I don't think the offensive adjusted net yards per passing attempt number has to be up in that 7.1, 7.2 range and all like that. But man, it dang sure better be 6.5 or better along in there. And once again, you better have some sort of a running game going on with that. And I think, in all fair, and I'm not a huge Peter King fan at this point. I was when I was like 12, but
dang.
Burn. But I've lost a lot of respect for Peter King over the years, but I think he still generally gets some things right. And his breakdown of this was, if the coach was anyone but Mike Tomlin, I think of the 2022 Steelers in the 5-12 range. That might be a little harsh there. But he says they still might be in that neighborhood because of, for the first time since training camp 2020 or 2004, there's no Ben Roethlisberger, and significant questions about whether Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett can be a good NFL passer. The offense should run through Najee Harris, he writes. His 307 carries as a rookie in 2021 could easily graduate to 330 in 2022. Oh Lord, I'm not looking. They got to find somebody to take some of this off of Najee, man. They got to run him right into the ground. But anyway, for the Steelers to be close to good, the defense will have to be better than 24th in the league in yards allowed. The talent is good for that. And he writes that new coordinator Terrell Austin will be under pressure to make sure it's a better unit. There's not going to be any way around, I don't think, this defense having to be the thing that drives this team, especially in that we talked about the first 6 games of the season here. While this offense gets their legs underneath them to start the season, this defense really is going to have to play a big part of it there. But I think overall, I think that's a kind of a fair assessment by King, and I think fans need to prepare themselves for the power rankings throughout the rest of the offseason to include the Steelers at really no better than 20th overall.
Sure. I think we've seen that in some of the other ones I believe we've written over the last weeks and months. I think just very broadly, the blueprint for Pittsburgh to become a playoff team this year is going to be to have about a top 5 to top 7 defense in terms of, in a lot of categories, but we're talking, points per game allowed is that main category, with the rushing offense from a yards per carry and success rate standpoint that's in probably the top half of football. Closer to top 10 would be preferable. And if you do those two things and your quarterback, whoever it is, takes care of the football, I think you'll be in that playoff hunt. If not, it's going to be a long year.
Look, why did this team win in 2004 and 2005? And why did it win in 2008?
Right. I mean, it was through its run game, its great defense, its pass rush, ability to create chaos. But I almost compare it a bit more to 2019 with, you don't know what you're going to get at quarterback. Hopefully you're going to get something better at quarterback this year than you did in 19, but you really relied on having an elite defense then. And obviously you would hope this running game would be better in 2022 than it was in 19, but something semi-similar where you're really relying on scheme and Mike Tomlin to kind of rally the troops and keep guys in it, because it's going to be certainly a tough path. But that's when Peter King makes the comment about Tomlin being able to find ways to win in times where no one really expects his team to be able to figure it out. Like in 2019, though, of course, they faded down the stretch, or last year in a 1-3 hole and things like that, and getting back in the playoffs. that's where I think King is giving Pittsburgh the benefit of the doubt.
And this is going to be a young team, isn't it?
Very young. I don't know the exact numbers. I think those come out. I think somebody writes that story in the offseason for, I think, a Philadelphia paper. But offensively, it's probably the youngest offense Pittsburgh's had in a long, long time. And it might be one of, if not the youngest offenses in football this year. And so that's where that turnovers come from, where you talk about leadership and just veteran experience and playoff experience. And this offense really has very little of that.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about Tomlin in the playoffs, or the Steelers in the playoffs, I should say?
Sure. You had the stat yesterday, or whoever did the graphic there, that Pittsburgh one of 11 teams to not win a playoff game since 16. What was the stat?
Right. The Steelers are, according to CBS Sports, teams with 0 playoff wins over the last 5 seasons. They are one of 11 teams at this point now. They are in the same category as the Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Denver Broncos, New York Giants, New York Jets, Las Vegas Raiders, Miami Dolphins, and Washington Commanders. That's not a great a group of teams that you want to be linked to right now. Not so nice distinction, if you will. Now, yada, yada. The Steelers have a nice distinction of not having had a losing record since 2003. But that's starting to not look so great on a bumper sticker, right?
Right.
Anymore here. The last playoff win this team had was in the 2016 season against the Kansas City Chiefs, and even that wasn't all that. I mean, remember that low scoring game, and thank God for, what was it, James Harrison, I think, in that game. The Steelers have made the playoffs since their last playoff win in 2016 against the Chiefs. The Steelers have made the playoffs 3 times. They obviously went 0-3 in those 3 playoff games, with their latest loss coming obviously last season to the Chiefs in the wild card game there. So, and look, I mean, are the Steelers guaranteed to make the playoffs in 2022, Alex?
No, of course not.
Let alone are they guaranteed to win a postseason game should they qualify for the tournament? You know?
Nope. No, you got to get there first for sure. So it's been a drought, absolutely, and I understand the frustration. And that's really the only sucky part about the end. You know, Ben's career. The end of it was you had so much talent and so many chances late in that career, and you never really got that close. And you had, tough losses and the wild card game to Cleveland, obviously 2 years ago, and it just
Jacksonville loss.
Yeah.
Oh. Sure.
So, I mean, there's certainly been some bitter endings and some teams that you felt were really talented and had good players. And it just, for multiple reasons, didn't end well.
When you look at this thing and you go back and you pull up the charts on Pro Football Reference and look at, this team going 5 years for a playoff win, that's pretty damn significant, Alex.
Yeah, when was the last time that happened prior to this?
I mean, I think you got to go back before Noel, right?
Really? Is it that long?
Yeah, I mean,
nothing even in like the late 90s, early 2000s, or 80s? Nothing in the 80s?
Nothing that's top 5, that's for sure.
Wow, that's remarkable. If we can pull the exact date on that, the last time Pittsburgh went 5 consecutive seasons without winning a playoff game.
Pull up their. Hold on a minute here. Let's pull.
I'm trying to look at it now, but it's going to take a second to try to read it.
The franchise encyclopedia page.
That's what I'm on.
Best way to look at that there. You start at, let's see, you're looking for either a loss and a first loss there, but let's going back here.
By the way, the Combine is staying at Indy for 2023 and 2024. So that's big news there. Just announced.
I mean, looking at 72, they lost in the conference. Let's see, they lost in the divisional round in 73, 74, they won the Super Bowl. I mean, you start going through this and you find me a gap of 5 years where they didn't win at least one playoff game.
Yeah, it looks like they didn't make the playoffs from 85 to 88. I'm trying to see if they won playoff games in the years that surround it, and they did. So that was a 4-year streak.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right, David. Looks like it's going to be whatever, 71 back. Yeah.
Yeah, pre-72, right?
Yeah, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like it'd be because they won a game in 70. Well, obviously, yeah. Be what, 67 to 71 the last time they won 5 years. So the right before Noel and the start of the Noel era, he was obviously rebuilding that team.
And then I mean, even back before then, right? The stretch of, I mean, in other words, if they were to hit 6 years this year, you're talking about hitting, you already have tied pre-null, right? With the 5 in a row. Going
Right.
6 is that really is dubious territory at that point, right?
Yeah, that is a remarkable and unfortunate stat of the weird to bring you guys, but you know, and I understand it's tough to win in the NFL, it's tough to win playoff games, but given the talent and the standard for this team, obviously they've missed the mark.
Right, absolutely they have, and especially these last 5 years with the kind of talent that they had. You look back at these last 5 years for the Steelers, overall, it's missed the standard. The standard has not been the standard.
No, it hasn't. And I understand obviously in 19 you lose Ben, so you can maybe discount that one, but you can't discount them all. And you've seen this team fade. It used to be for Tomlin the first 10 years of his coaching career, Pittsburgh was really good down the stretch. They were great December and January teams, and you haven't seen that as much in recent years. Last year was a little bit better, but just overall, you think about in was that 2020? They really struggled down the stretch after having been the last undefeated team. In 2019, you're 8-5. You drop your next three. You go back to other years, similar stories there. And so this team has to be better in December and January.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it okay if they don't make the playoffs? Assuming they have to get their rookie. There are going to start being excuses attached to this, right?
Yeah, I don't like to say it's okay.
To be.
Yeah, I never like to say it's okay to miss the playoffs. I think context matters, and you understand what are your odds going into the year. And obviously, if you're showing at least progress, and if Pickett starts or plays and looks good, then you feel encouraged for the future. Even if you don't make the playoffs this year, that's really the most important thing this year is if he plays, how well does Kenny Pickett play? How good does he look? And that kind of defines your optimism for the future. But I'll never say it's okay to miss the playoffs.
Okay. Is it a huge, I personally, from where you are right now, is this a Super Bowl winning team in 2022?
No, I don't think anyone is claiming that.
I think it would be a huge boom if this team not only made the playoffs, but won a playoff game.
Sure. I mean, because the expectation is for the team to probably not do either of those things right now.
When you look at this thing as a graphic overall, and it probably doesn't hit home, but when you have the conversation that we've had for the last 10 minutes about teams with 0 playoff wins over the last 5 seasons and how significant that is historically for the Steelers, it becomes a bigger deal, doesn't it?
It does, and I don't want to be in any sort of playoff category with the Lions and Bears and all those teams. That hurts a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of takes the shine off of that not finishing under 500, right?
Right. Well, that's why I've always been pretty anti that. I mean, I understand the uniqueness of the stat, and it's certainly a testament to be that successful for that, to at least hit that mark for so long, but that's not the standard in Pittsburgh to go 9-7 or now 9-8 or whatever and be one and done. The standard in Pittsburgh is playoff wins and Lombardi trophies, and you've not seen enough of those recently.
Man, can you imagine if this team not only misses the playoffs this year, but goes under 500 this year?
It's possible. It's a transitional year. Certainly, I don't think anyone would be that surprised if they went, 8-9 or 7-10.
Boy, the seat would then at that point. I mean, it would be really hot for Mike Tomlin heading into 2023, wouldn't it?
No, I don't know if I would say that. I think people understand with a new quarterback and a lot of change there, unless the team really struggles and goes to the 5-12 that King talked about. But Tomlin signed this contract. He's got the best job security of anybody in football. Obviously, there'd be a lot of, noise and chatter about, Tomlin from media types. But in terms of him actually being on a hot seat for Rooney and getting fired, I doubt that.
If this team wins 10 games, is Tomlin finally in a coach of the year discussion?
I don't know. It depends how other coaches look. I mean, he probably wouldn't be if they wouldn't, because it's just so people just kind of almost expect Tomlin to do well and to figure it out, and for the team to punch above their weight. So unless they really had a great season, like division winning type year, he probably wouldn't get much love.
All right. All right. That wrapped up a couple of topical things on the site the last couple of days.
Speaking of coaching, one thing I do want to talk about as well, really, I think there's less of a discussion there than what's being talked about on social media, but it's the off season, so I understand we're just trying to find things to discuss. Mike Munchak was on, I think, The Fan or one of the local Pittsburgh stations last week and was asked, Pittsburgh obviously had a change in offensive line coach this year. The hosts asked Munchak, were you in talks with Pittsburgh to be the offensive line coach to come back to Pittsburgh? And he really didn't give an answer there. He said he didn't want to talk about it too much. He kind of made a reference to, he still talks to Tomlin and maybe hinted at there was a brief discussion. But my interpretation of what Munchak said is he wants to remain out west. That's why he left Pittsburgh for Denver in the first place, to be closer to family, I think his daughter in particular, and he wants to do whatever he can to try to stay in that region.
Yeah, my takeaway overall was that maybe a phone call was made, but it was like, look, my whole goal was to be out here closer to my family, and at least for the time being, and that kind. And in other words, I don't think this was even close to happening.
Right. No, I don't think at all. And so I know a lot of people I saw on Twitter saying, bring Munchak back, or they should have hired Munchak. I don't think he had any intention of coming back east side. And so that's really kind of a non-story.
Right.
All right, so I would love to have the guy, obviously.
Right.
That would have been
and who knows? I mean, it sounds like Munchak's kind of keeping his options open, and all. He's not on it. He's not, obviously not on the staff right now, right? So,
right. Which is incredible. Who does not? I understand he wanted to be kind of more selective about where he was going to go, but how does that guy not have a job right now?
Right.
I mean, I did the fact that Denver didn't retain him. I knew new head coach, but I think Nathaniel Hackett screwed that up by letting Munchak go.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else that we missed that you want to address?
Hey, we got all of it there. I think we hit most of it, didn't we?
We did. So let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's see what we have here in the email machine real quick. Let me filter it.
Sure, we'll get some more after this week. And so, we'll be covering OTAs Tuesday through Thursday this week and see what all. Again, it's going to be a lot of Tomlin talking about conditioning and rookies look good and a lot of standard fare, but there's usually one or two interesting things to come out of the week.
All right, Bryce writes in, hey guys, great job on the draft. You were my go-to portal. Here's my thoughts and questions with the roster as it stands right now. If the 2023 draft were tomorrow, here's my 7 round mock by position of need. He says he's excluding the quarterback position. He says number 1, true cornerback. Number 2, inside linebacker. Number 3, offensive tackle. Number 4, defensive line. Number 5, safety. Number 6, number 2, running back. And number 7, a number 2 tight end. What are your thoughts on my order of current needs, and what would your order be if the 2023 draft were tomorrow? I'm not even interested in discussing your order or what my order would be, Bryce, to be quite honest with you. I mean, so much stuff changes, over the course of not only the rest of this off season, but into the season as well, too. I mean, what's going to happen with Deontay Johnson in that contract? Is a guy like Mason Cole going to work out for you? What's going to happen at the center position here? Mm-hmm. Like it or not, even though they signed Mason Cole to the deal, that they signed really any of those guys that they signed to the deal, and that includes Chukwuma Okorafor. I mean, these guys could be one and done. If you need it to be. Obviously, you hope and don't think that it's going to go that way. But and what's going to happen at cornerback? Can a guy like Levi Wallace become the number 1? Can Akella Willis? There's so many questions, and he's got inside linebacker at number 2 here. What if Miles Jack becomes kind of the second coming, if you will, of kind of a James Ferrier? There's so many questions right now that to me it's a fruitless kind of exercise to get here talking about draft current needs and order of positions.
Sure, I don't pay much mind here right now. I'm just focused on the here and now and the guys who have to play well this year, the spotlight.
I mean, here we are in the offseason. We're already getting questions. I mean, we're not even starting OTAs. We're getting questions about the 2023 draft.
Right. Yeah. The spotlight's so bright on guys this year. How does Devin Bush look? Kevin Dotson, Chase Claypool, et cetera, et cetera. Terrell Edmonds. I mean, their play this year can really determine what needs you may or may not have next year. So I understand you can look at off-ball linebacker and say, oh, kind of projecting out, maybe Bush won't be back, and Jack, will only on a 2-year deal. So I get that, but it's just as Dave said, so much will change from now until a year from now that it's really a pointless conversation.
Jason Bodine from Vegas writes in, he listened to the Friday the 13th podcast. Couldn't believe his ears. What was up with all the football talk? Where were the TV game show and hee-haw references? Where were the classic music and movie references? And by golly, how can we keep up with Alex's love life without the Tinder updates? He says, Dave, how can Alex hang by the bar if you don't put out the vibe? Let's see. I mean, it was only 49 minutes for crying out loud. No offense to Josh, but it really was Friday the 13th. It was like Mulder and Scully. Let's see. Real talk, David, got a taste when you hang up the cleats and can honestly say you'll be missed. Look, here's the thing. Jason, appreciate, the kind words in there and all like that. But, Josh is still kind of getting, more into the use of filling in. And, at some point, if this show becomes Josh and Alex, then it'll create its own dynamic in there. The thing is us older people get used to things a certain way and we don't like change. Look, I hate change. Nobody hates change more than me. Now it ruins my days to have the wrong brand of toothpaste brought into the house, or for the laundry detergent to have a added new feature to it, even though it looks and seems like it might be the same, or the toilet paper to have a design on it as opposing to be all white. People are like that, and however this thing progresses, it will progress. And Alex being part of it, I have no doubt that it'll be a quality product moving forward. Josh adds a lot to what we do on this site right now. Josh will get more comfortable if he's asked to do more of the podcast and all like that as well too. So, don't take one show as being that's how things are going to be. And look, hopefully if things go right with this, I'll have a lesser role in this thing, but hopefully you'll still allow me to do, maybe a couple of shows a week or something along those lines there.
Sure.
Moving forward here, but there will be, I guarantee you though, there will be times where Josh or Jonathan Heitritter or some of these other younger kids come in and help Alex out, because I can't do this forever, and plain and simple, health issues and all like that. There's going to have to be some give and take in this thing if I'm going to have any hand in it at all moving forward here. So we apologize that maybe the show wasn't up to your references and all like that. And I appreciate the kind words to me, but as I've told Alex for several years, and it's part of my really daily believing too, is nothing lasts forever, man. Things change. There's a beginning and end to everything in this universe here. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully we'll keep the constructive maybe criticism coming, and we'll try to work through all that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, whenever I first started, being a regular on the podcast here with you, we didn't always have the banter that we had now. I'm sure if you go back and listen to those shows, so it evolves and it creates its own references and inside jokes over time. And when Josh and I talked, that was, I think, for the schedule, I want to say, and I told him before we started, let's do about 45 minutes. We recorded late that night because it was after the schedule and things like that. So it wasn't in the morning where there was a little bit more time. I didn't want to take up too much of Josh's time. So that was an intentional thing to be a little bit shorter that day. We wanted to just kind of really talk about the schedule and exit the show. We didn't have read emails or anything like that, even to reference as well. So that was really by design and my choice to go with a shorter show that day.
Look, I mean, Alex has been with me long enough. He knows, the standards really of what not only the site but the podcast is about, and these younger younger people like Josh have been indoctrinated long enough, they kind of get it as well too, so should once again, let things progress and let people get their feet wet in this. Josh hasn't done but just a handful of shows at this point. Him and Alex will kind of get a voice together should they start having the podcast more. I mean, that's not in the plans, at least not, right now. Now that, we might get into the season or something like that, where there might be a couple weeks in a row where maybe I need Josh to take, a third show out of a third, some sort of thing like that. But, Alex is always, mindful. I'm always mindful of the product that we're delivering, and, just give it time.
Yep, give it time.
Adam Guest writes in, can you rank the Steelers' overall quarterback performances over the last 3 years compared to the rest of the NFL? I would estimate them in the 28 to 30 range. I think we're likely taking a step forward just by moving on from Ben, he says, and possibly taking a big step forward. You guys seem to never talk about what a positive development this is, and I'm not sure if it's because you think Ben has been good or even less than really bad, or because you tend to avoid speaking negatively about players. That's funny. I get some emails thinking that, man, I sure do hate Ben Roethlisberger, and I hate the Steelers here. Look, the quarterback performance hasn't been great. I'm not going to sit here and try to rank the overall quarterback performance over the last 3 years compared to the rest of the NFL. I'll tell you this, though. Ben obviously, Ben's numbers throwing downfield is something that we talked about consistently for the last 2 or 3 years. And obviously Ben was injured for a good portion. What was it? 2019, right?
When he got hurt.
Season there. So, 2020, 2021, obviously wasn't the old Ben. Ben not being able to extend plays anymore. Ben really with the short passing game, not being able to hit consistently down the field. This offense not having a running game last 2 seasons has been huge for this offense. But all that disclaimer aside, look at all those come from behind wins that Ben helped orchestrate. Just last year alone. It wasn't pretty for a lot of it there, but he still found a way to get the team to win, but that being said, is it a step moving forward without Ben? I mean, we'll see. You hope long-term. Yeah, definitely past 2022. If not, you made the wrong choice at quarterback, drafting a quarterback in the first round there. Overall, there are going to be, people don't want to hear it, but there are going to be bumps in the road at the quarterback position in 2022.
Sure. I mean, there are definitely pros and cons to Ben leaving. I talked about recent episode that Chase Claypool might be more of a vertical threat this year when you have more of a downfield threat and a more consistent, vertical passing game. So certainly I think from a schematic standpoint, Trubisky and Pickett are both better fits to what Matt Canada wants to do compared to Ben. So I think there's certainly a benefit there where it's going to be more of what Canada wants to run, not this kind of awkward fit between Canada trying to run his offense, but also work with what Ben does best, which those two things really never mesh well. But there's a lot of the intangible things that you're going to miss, the no huddle, the late game situations, the leadership, the ability to change the play on the fly and be in good situations and good calls and things like that. So there's pros and cons, but I think we've talked about that. So, and how do you want to rank the quarterback play? Obviously, it wasn't very good the last couple of years, and hopefully it will be better, but time will tell on that.
Right. And, once again, he says likely taking a step forward just by moving on from Ben. Okay, I can accept that, but I mean, how big a step forward is everybody expecting in 2022?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard to judge that. It depends on who the quarterback is and how all that looks. A lot of outstanding questions. They're not to pivot too much, but I was interested to see that Chris Sims ranked Mitch Trubisky 27th on his quarterback ranking after not ranking him last year. And after he just threw 8 passes last year, one of them being a bad pick against the Colts. Not really sure how that gets Trubisky to 27th, but they're not my rankings.
Yeah, I don't understand how he got there that quick either. And even still, he's got him behind just one spot, only behind what, Jameis Winston, I think, right?
Did he? Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, let me pull these up real quick here while we're talking about the rankings. He's going through this, and I think he's made it so far through 26. What he's doing is ranking the quarterbacks around the league 1 through 40, and he's counting them down. Drew Lock, he had it 40th overall, one spot ahead of him. He had Kenny Pickett, Teddy Bridgewater at 38. Gardner Minshew at 37, Tyrod Taylor at 36, Davis Mills at 35, Tyler Huntley with the Ravens at 34, Geno Smith at 33, Sam Darnold at 32, Trey Lance at 31, Jared Goff at 30, Tua Tagovailoa at 29, Marcus Mariota with the Falcons now at 28, then Mitch Trubisky at 27, and then Jameis Winston at 26. So Mitchell Trubisky is sandwiched in between Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I think I would add Trubisky lower. I understand Pickett at 39 because he's a rookie, and how do you rank a rookie? And so I don't have. And when Sims talked about Pickett, he spoke pretty glowingly, compared him mentally to, I think, what, Joe Burrow and Mac Jones. So really likes his game overall. But again, it's much ado about nothing. Their quarterback rankings, who cares? But Mitch Trubisky 27th after his time in Chicago and barely playing last year. I don't really know why Sims put him that high.
Right. And look, we're going to be talking about this once again for most of this season. Mitch Trubisky is going to be able to keep, if he gets that job out of the chute, he's going to be able to keep that job as long as this team's winning. But if this team gets in a situation where, you get through the first, 6, you get to that bye week there and you're like 3 games under 500, that's when the talk starts,
Sure.
Because they did not sit Kenny Pickett, or they did not draft Kenny Pickett to have him sit his entire rookie season with the experience that he has, unless they have a guy that they can't bench in Mitchell Trubisky. This is a lot different than Ben Roethlisberger's 2004 rookie season because of the experience that Kenny Pickett has coming out of college. Kenny Pickett should be expected to be, a good full season ahead of Ben Roethlisberger, dating back all the way back to that time. Now, the game has changed quite a bit. I don't think that the 2022 Steelers can win ball games week in and week out by running the football 38 times a game that way. And, and have Ben Roethlisberger attempt only, 20, 21 passes in a game. It'd be nice if you could win that way, but the game has just changed so much over the years. And it's slanted the rules of, more slanted toward the offensive side of football now that you need a little bit more out of the quarterback than maybe what the Steelers got or asked out of Ben Roethlisberger back in 2004, 2005.
Sure. And just the landscape of rookies playing right away has changed so much. Back then in Pittsburgh and around the league, especially with quarterbacks, most of those guys sat early. And the guys that did play early, they played because they had to, and usually led with disastrous results. Peyton Manning's first year was a mess, Tim Couch, David Carr, et cetera, et cetera. So teams really sat their quarterback. That those times have certainly changed now. And so to bring it back full circle to the first day of OTAs, you talk about the quarterback battle. It won't necessarily feel like that today, but the quarterback competition starts now. It starts today. And there's no winner decided today or tomorrow or next week or next month, but that battle does begin today. It's the first time Trubisky, Pickett on the same football field together. And so you begin your evaluation process.
Jim Bendis writes in a request for Alex in regard to Kevin Colbert draft rankings. I like your little exercise. It gives perspective. Request, after you finish publishing the rankings, could you work with your stat guy on your staff to put them in a chart of some kind. Example, divide the rankings in quarters and count the number of first, second, third, etc. for each group. It would be interesting to see how many first rounders is in the last quarter and how many late rounders are in the first quarter. This will help understand how good a GM Kevin Colbert was, he says. It would be really neat to put the top 100 undrafted free agents and trades in there in terms of impact, good or bad, but that would be a lot of work. Just a thought. Jim, who knows? I'm not going to speak for Alex. It is a long off season. Once you get into the month of June, you get past the mandatory mini camp and stuff like that. But with that said, I don't know if Alex is going to want to go down those paths.
I'm just thinking how you fit 176 names into a chart and make it readable. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking about some sort of wrap up on that, trying to maybe put a visual aid to it. So I'll talk to Clayton or Andrew or someone like that, see what we can do. No promises there, but we're motoring on through the rankings. We're up to number 56. So we're kind of getting out of the names that totally sucked and getting to some names that were okay. Some James Washington, Anthony Chickalo, Trey Essex, those guys on the list today.
Let's see. Sean and Kim, did we hit this the other day? Is it possible you could share a comparison of Ben Roethlisberger's college career versus Kenny Pickett's college career as far as stats, yards, touchdown, interceptions, wins, losses, etc.? Would be interesting to know. Keep up the great work. Love the show. Sean, here's the thing, man. I mean, you're talking about such a gap between years. I mean, if we're talking about a 5-year gap or something as far as some of these statistical categories there, maybe it'd be okay. The context would be cute or something to look at there. But I mean, we're talking about such a span there that what good are we going to get? Maybe other than maybe a few positive warm and fuzzies by comparing the college stats of the two guys. I mean, Pickett, had 5 seasons, and really his first 4, his last one was a lot different than his first 4 comparative. Whereas Roethlisberger, played at a smaller school and didn't play as obviously as many games.
Yeah, I mean, you can pull up a sports reference page and look at the stats on both guys in college. I don't know what you do with that information, though. What does it tell you? I don't think it'll tell you much of anything. I mean, I can look them up right now really quickly and just kind of read them off to you, I guess, but I don't know what the conclusion could even be.
And we can't go back and look at some of the, we don't have a lot of the stuff drilled down either as far as the more
advanced stats.
The deeper advanced stats in middle of the field and those kind of things there. I mean, if you want to look at just raw stats, I mean, nowadays, I mean, just looking at raw stats, you're missing, 98% of the picture by doing that.
Yeah, I don't have wins losses off the top there, but Ben's career in college completion percentage 65.5. Pickett's is 62.4, although it was 67% last year. Ben's yards per attempt 8.3, Pickett's 7.3. Touchdowns, Ben had 84. Pickett had 81. Ben did that in 3 years, by the way. 34 interceptions for Ben, 32 for Pickett. Quarterback rating 151 for Ben, 136 for Pickett. So I guess Ben had better numbers overall, whatever that's worth.
Right. And what is it worth?
I mean, it's what you paid for it. I mean, not much. It ain't worth much of anything.
All right, look, we've got the stat guys doing some incredible stuff on Andrew and Clayton and all like that. So look for some more articles from those guys on stats throughout the off season here. And
I will say here's one interesting thing I can take away from this. Both Ben and Pickett in their last year really took big steps in their production overall. Okay. Ben in 2002. His completion percentage went from 63% to 69%. For Pickett, it went from 61 to 67. Ben, his sophomore year, had just 22 touchdowns to 11 picks. His junior year, his last year, had 37 touchdowns to 10 picks. Pickett went from 13-9 to 42-7. So one interesting comparison you can make there is those guys making big leaps in production their final college season.
All right. Fair enough there. All right. I think we've got through all the emails here. Any final thoughts here? I guess some of the news is going to start coming in from the OTAs now, right?
Yeah, should be starting soon. So Dave and I will come back Friday, and that will wrap up the OTAs, and we'll take it from there.
Did you have a good birthday and all?
Pirates lost, so
yeah.
but I got to watch the inside the park run, and I did not have to subject myself to the 18-4 game on Sunday at 11:30, which is just God bless anyone who showed up for that game. So yeah, it was good.
All right, there you go. Glad you did. All right, Alex and I'll be back. What's today? Today's
Tuesday. We'll be back Friday.
Be back Friday, barring anything spectacular happening, right? So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upright navigational bar as well, too. And so until Friday, please hit the site, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks to all of our great contributors as well, too, helping out, keeping this content flowing through the offseason. So as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.